too much noise today. I just need the road, the rain, and the hum of the engine.
Have you ever felt like there's a part of you don't really understand? Like, you're not sure who you really are anymore? I've been there too. Let me share something with you. Maybe it'll help you see things a little clearer. You ever wake up one day and realize you've been living someone else's life? I don't mean in the dramatic, movie-style way where someone steals your identity. I mean something quieter, more subtle, but somehow heavier. Like a fog you didn't know was there until it suddenly lifts. It's the kind of feeling that creeps in when you're alone, maybe scrolling through your phone or lying in bed at night, and you suddenly ask yourself, who am I really? And how did I end up here? That's what happened to me. Not all at once. More like a slow unraveling of everything I thought I knew about myself. I looked around at the choices I'd made, my career, my relationships, the way I dressed, even the things I said out loud to fit into rooms that never truly felt like mine. And I realized how many of them weren't really mine to begin with. They were borrowed, or built to survive, or inherited from people who had no idea who I really was inside. And I know I'm not alone in this. So many of us are walking around wearing these carefully constructed versions of ourselves, trying to be the right kind of daughter or son, the reliable friend, the productive employee, the acceptable human. Somewhere along the line, we learn which parts of us are okay and which ones we better lock away. Be polite. Be efficient. Don't cry too much. Don't dream too big. Don't be too sensitive. Don't ask for too much. Little by little, we shrink. We comply. We become who we think we need to be. And here's the strangest part. Most of us don't even realize we're doing it. That was the scariest part for me, realizing how deep the programming ran. I thought I was making conscious decisions, choosing my path, chasing my goals. But when I started asking where those goals came from, the silence was deafening. Was I doing this because I wanted it, or because I was scared of being unloved if I didn't? That's when I found myself drawn to the work of Carl Jung. I didn't go looking for him. It's like his words found me. One line in particular hit me so hard, it stopped me in my tracks. Life really begins only when you find yourself. It felt like truth. Not the kind of motivational poster truth, but the kind that makes your stomach turn because you know you've been avoiding it. What does it mean to find yourself? Anyway, I thought I knew who I was. I could list my hobbies, my job title, my favorite foods. But this wasn't about facts. It was about something underneath all that. Something I hadn't looked at in years. And that scared the hell out of me. Because if I admitted that I'd been living a version of myself built on survival and expectations, then I had to also admit that I didn't really know the person underneath. That the real me, the one buried under all the layers, was a stranger. There's this strange grief that comes with that realization. Like mourning a life you never got to live. But alongside the grief, something else stirred too. Something like hope. Because if I'd been lost all this time, maybe I could also be found. It wasn't about throwing everything away or starting over from scratch. It was about finally turning inward and asking the questions I've been too afraid to face. What do I really believe? What makes my heart beat faster? Not from anxiety, but from aliveness. What parts of me did I hide because I thought they were too much or not enough? Who am I when no one is watching? Let me be honest, this isn't a neat or linear journey. Some days, I still fall back into old roles. Some days, I doubt everything. But I'm beginning to recognize the moments when I'm acting for my truth and the moments when I'm not. And that awareness changes everything. It's like waking up in the middle of a dream. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to know you've been asleep. This is where the story really begins. Not when I had it all figured out, but when I started asking different questions. Questions that didn't have easy answers. Questions that cracked something open inside me. If you're reading this and feeling even a flicker of recognition, if something in you is whispering that there's more, not more to do, but more to be, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not broken. You're waking up. And maybe, just maybe, this is where your real life begins too. You know what's wild? Once you start waking up, even just a little, you can't unsee what's real. After that first moment of clarity, I started noticing how much of my life was shaped by the mask I wore. The persona. That's what Jung called it. The public face we show the world. It's not necessarily fake, but it's curated, designed for survival, for approval, for fitting in. And over time, if you're not careful, it starts to feel like you. I used to take pride in mine. I thought I was adaptable, easygoing, responsible, the kind of person you could count on. But underneath, I was tired. I was constantly scanning my environment, adjusting myself to what I thought people wanted. I was smiling when I felt numb, saying yes when my whole body screamed no. I had become a master at pleasing others and abandoning myself in the process. The persona became my armor and my prison. And the most painful part? I didn't even know I was doing it. It felt like that's just how life was. That's how you adult. You show up, you perform, you smile through it. But there were moments, quiet ones, where I caught glimpses of who I used to be. The real me, underneath all the performing. I remember being a kid. I used to draw for hours, make up songs out of nowhere, cry when I was overwhelmed, laugh so hard it echoed through the whole house. I didn't care how I looked. I didn't filter my joy or my sadness. I just was. But then someone, a teacher, a parent, a classmate, would say, "Don't be so emotional," or "You're being too dramatic," or "That's not realistic." And little by little, I learned. I learned which parts of me were welcome and which ones were too much. So I started hiding them, tucking them away, smiling instead of crying, nodding instead of challenging. I built a persona that would be accepted, but I didn't realize the cost. Because when you live through a mask long enough, you start to forget what your real face looks like. And that forgetting, that's the real heartbreak. Not just losing touch with yourself, but starting to believe the mask is who you are. There were days I felt like I was moving through life on autopilot. I do all the right things, hit all the normal milestones, and still feel empty. Like I was checking off boxes on a script I didn't write. I'd lie in bed at night and feel this ache in my chest. Not from any specific pain, but from something missing. Like a song playing in another room that I couldn't quite hear. That was the moment I realized I was homesick for myself. And you know what's terrifying? The world will praise your mask. It'll reward you for being agreeable, put together, successful, even if you're dying inside. No one stops to ask if you're happy. They just comment on how well you're doing. So you keep going until one day, the weight of pretending becomes too heavy, where the emptiness becomes too loud, where you catch your own reflection and realize you don't recognize the person looking back. That's when everything shifts. For me, it started with a question I couldn't ignore anymore. What if I stopped trying to be who they want me to be and started being who I actually am? At first, I didn't even know how to answer it. I was so used to the role, I didn't know where the mask ended and I began. But even asking the question cracked something open. I started paying attention to the moments when I felt most alive, to the people who made me feel seen, to the times when I didn't have to shrink or pretend. Those moments became breadcrumbs, leading me back to myself. And little by little, I began to understand the persona isn't the enemy. It helped me survive. It got me through school, jobs, relationships. But it's not supposed to be permanent. It's not supposed to define me. It's just a layer, a costume I wore for a while. And now it's time to take it off. That doesn't mean I throw everything away. It means I start choosing differently, living with more honesty, giving myself permission to be messy, to be real, to not have it all figured out. I don't always get it right. Sometimes I still catch myself defaulting to the mask, especially when I'm scared or vulnerable. But now I notice, and that awareness is power. Because once you see the persona for what it is, you can stop letting it run your life. You can start showing up as you, not the edited version, the whole you. And there's so much freedom in that, so much lightness, so much truth. It's like taking a deep breath after holding it for years. There's something I need to tell you, something that's hard to admit, even now. For a long time, I believed that if I could just be good enough, I wouldn't have to deal with the messier parts of myself. I thought if I was kind, thoughtful, productive, responsible, all the things people seem to value, then maybe I could outrun the parts of me I didn't like. The parts that felt dark, shameful, weak. But here's the thing I've learned. You can't heal what you won't face. And what you ignore doesn't disappear. It just waits. It waits in the shadows of your psyche, shaping your life from behind the curtain. That's what Jung called the shadow. The parts of ourselves we repress, deny, or disown. It's not just the bad stuff either. It's everything we were told wasn't okay to be: needy, angry, too loud, too soft, too emotional, too ambitious. It's also our hidden gifts, our sensitivity, our creativity, our intuition. Anything that didn't feel safe to express got buried. At first, I didn't understand what my shadow even was. I thought I was a decent person, introspective, well-meaning. But then something strange started happening. Certain people would trigger me in ways I couldn't explain. Someone would be a little too arrogant, or a little too sensitive, or a little too carefree. And I'd feel this disproportionate surge of irritation, sometimes even disgust. And I didn't know why. I'd judge them harshly in my mind or gossip about them later, pretending it didn't mean anything. But it did. Oh, it did. Those emotional spikes weren't about them. They were mirrors. Uncomfortable reflections of the parts of me I hadn't made peace with. The parts one had stuffed down, labeled wrong, and buried beneath the mask. And when I saw those traits in others, my shadow flared up. It was trying to get my attention. I remember one day, I met someone who was unapologetically bold, the kind of person who says what they think without watering it down. And instead of admiring their confidence, I felt this rush of resentment. It took me a while to realize I wasn't angry at them. I was grieving the part of me that learned it wasn't safe to speak up. That moment hit me like a wave. All the judgments I'd cast on others suddenly turned inward, not in a shaming way, but with compassion. I started to see that my shadow wasn't my enemy. It was a wounded part of me, longing to be acknowledged. Facing your shadow isn't easy. It's messy, uncomfortable. It forces you to confront your patterns, your defensiveness, your need for control, your perfectionism, your fear of vulnerability, but also unlocks something extraordinary: freedom. Because the shadow isn't just a container for pain. It's also the hiding place for your deepest power. The qualities you suppressed, your fire, your tenderness, your boldness, your depth, they're still there, waiting. And the moment you stop running from them is the moment you start coming back to life. I began having honest conversations with myself, asking, what am I afraid of? What parts of me have I abandoned to feel safe? And the answers weren't always pretty, but they were true. I cried, a lot. I wrote pages and pages in my journal. I revisited old memories I thought I had made peace with. But through it all, I kept hearing this quiet, steady voice inside me say, it's okay to be all of you. That's the real turning point. When you stop trying to be good and start trying to be whole. You stop saying, I'll love myself when, and start saying, I'm worthy even with this mess. There's a kind of peace that comes with that. Not the kind where everything is fixed, but the kind where you're no longer at war with yourself. You stop cutting off pieces of your soul to be accepted. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop hiding your fire out of fear it'll burn someone. Instead, you learn to carry your shadow with you, not as a burden, but as a companion, a teacher, a reminder that your humanity is not a flaw, but a doorway. And through that doorway, something sacred begins to emerge, your true self. Not the one built from expectations or fear, but the one that was always there, under the rubble, under the mask, under the shame. The you that is raw and real and radiant. And for the first time in a long time, you start to feel whole. Not because you become perfect, but because you've stopped pretending. Once I started digging into my shadow, I realized something even deeper was at play. It wasn't just the persona or the hidden parts of me I'd buried. It was the patterns. These strange, repeating loops in my life that didn't make sense at first. The same kinds of people showing up again and again. The same conflicts, the same emotional spirals. It was like life kept handing me the same lesson wrapped in different disguises. I used to think it was bad luck, or that something was wrong with me. But then I learned about archetypes. Carl Jung believed we all carry universal patterns inside us. Ancient blueprints that shape how we think, feel, and act. The hero, the caregiver, the rebel, the lover, the orphan, the sage. These aren't just characters in stories. They're the stories. And they live inside us, playing out through our choices, relationships, even our dreams. At first, this idea felt too abstract. I didn't want to be reduced to some mythic symbol. But the more I looked, the more I saw it. In myself, in others, in everything. Like the hero part of me, always striving, always pushing, always chasing the next mountain to climb. That part got me far. It gave me drive and resilience. But it also exhausted me. It convinced me that my worth depended on achievement. That rest was weakness. That if I stopped trying so hard, I'd disappear. And then there was the rebel, the part of me that hated being boxed in. That bristled at authority, questioned rules, and felt restless in routines. That part helped me break free from toxic environments and speak up when it mattered. But when it went unchecked, it left me isolated, always resisting, never trusting. These archetypes weren't good or bad, they were forces. And the more unconscious they were, the more they ran the show without me realizing it. There was one night that really cracked me open. I had just ended a relationship. Another one where I lost myself trying to be enough. I remember sitting on the floor, crying, asking out loud, why does this keep happening? And this thought came in like a whisper, you're reenacting something. It wasn't just about that relationship. It was about an old wound, the orphan in me, the child who felt unseen and learned to earn love by becoming whoever someone else needed. That archetype had been running my love life for years. Suddenly, it all made sense. I wasn't just choosing people, I was playing out a script, hoping for a different ending, but repeating the same act. And the only way to break the cycle was to name it, to see it clearly, to own it. That's what awareness does. It doesn't make the pain disappear, but it puts the pen back in your hand. I started seeing these archetypes everywhere. The sage in me, longing for meaning and truth. The caregiver, always trying to heal others while ignoring my own wounds. The lover, aching for deep connection. The shadow, lurking just behind it all, reminding me that whatever I deny will eventually demand my attention. And you know what? There was something strangely comforting about it, because it meant I wasn't crazy. I wasn't doomed. I was just human, made of stories, layers, symbols. But here's the twist. These inner archetypes aren't fixed. They evolve. And when you become aware of them, you can choose how they show up. I can let the hero in me fight for things that truly matter, not just for validation. I can listen to the sage without letting her turn life into an endless quest for answers. I can love with my whole heart without losing myself. The moment I started working with these energies instead of being controlled by them, everything changed. It felt like finally learning the rules of a game I'd been playing blindfolded. And more than that, it gave me compassion for myself and for everyone else. Because we're all walking around with our own cast of characters trying to make sense of who we are. Most of us have no idea that the same old pain keeps surfacing because we're reenacting something ancient, something unspoken. But when you see it, when you finally see it, it becomes a gift. A map, not to perfection, but to presence. You start to ask different questions. Not, why is this happening to me? But what part of me is being called to grow? Not, why can't I break this pattern? But which archetype is leading right now? And what does it need from me? And in that space, that sacred pause, you find your power. Not the kind that controls others, but the kind that sets you free. This is the part where things really started to shift for me, where everything I'd been uncovering began to connect in a way that felt alive. Up to this point, I'd been peeling back layers. The persona, the shadow, the archetypes, all these parts of me that had been unconsciously directing my life. But beneath it all, something deeper was stirring. A quiet, steady presence that didn't feel like a role or a reaction. It felt like me. Not the me I had learned to perform, but the one I forgot I ever was. Jung called it the self. Not the ego, not the thinking, striving, self-conscious version of I. The self is something older, wiser, whole. It's the part of us that holds all the fragments and says, yes, this too belongs. The joy, the rage, the tenderness, the fear, all of it. I didn't meet myself in some mystical moment. There were no lightning bolts or out-of-body visions. It came slowly, like water rising, in quiet moments of honesty, in stillness, in grief, in wonder, in the pause between reacting and responding. The self doesn't scream. It waits, patiently, until we're ready to listen. And for me, that listening began when I stopped running from my discomfort. You see, most of us are trained to avoid pain, to numb it, fix it, outrun it. But the self lives beneath the pain, not on the other side of it. It's found in the willingness to stay with ourselves when everything in us wants to escape, to sit with the ache without demanding that it go away. There was a moment, I remember it vividly, where I felt this wave of sadness wash over me. Not for something specific, just an old, familiar loneliness that I used to push away. But instead of reaching for distraction, I stayed. I closed my eyes. I put a hand on my chest, and I whispered, "I'm here." That's when I felt it, the self, not as an idea, but as a presence, as home. It didn't judge me. It didn't offer solutions. It just was steady, loving, whole. And in that moment, something softened. That's what individuation is. Not fixing yourself, but finding yourself. Not polishing the mask, but integrating all the pieces into something that's real. And when I started living from that space, everything began to feel different. I still had fears. I still got triggered, but I wasn't owned by those things anymore. Because I had a place to return to, a center, a truth that didn't shift with the moods or the stories or the past. And you know what else I discovered? That the self doesn't ask us to be anyone else. It doesn't compare or compete. It doesn't measure worth by achievement or appearance. It simply says, be here, as you are. All of you is welcome. Do you know how healing that is? To be welcomed by yourself? For so long, I believed I had to earn my own love. I thought I needed to become someone better to be worthy of my own tenderness. But the self taught me that wholeness doesn't come from becoming something new. It comes from remembering who you've always been. That's not easy, especially in a world that profits off your self-doubt. Everything around us is designed to make us feel lacking, like we need one more product, one more milestone, one more transformation to finally be okay. But the self isn't interested in that. It's not interested in performance. It's interested in presence. And presence is where the healing begins. I started making small changes. I began journaling without censoring, letting my dreams speak in symbols I didn't fully understand, creating art just for me. Not to be shared, not to be perfect, just to express something wordless. I walked alone more, sat in silence, listened to my intuition, noticed when I was posturing, when I was people-pleasing, when I was slipping back into roles. And instead of shaming myself, I just noticed, with compassion, with curiosity. That's the thing. The self doesn't demand that we be flawless. It invites us to be whole, to reclaim what we exiled, to forgive what we judged, to love what we were told was unlovable. It's not a destination. It's a relationship, one that deepens the more we show up. And let me tell you, there's nothing more powerful than beginning to trust yourself again. To know that no matter what happens, no matter how messy or uncertain or painful, you won't abandon yourself. That's what it means to become whole. Not to become perfect, but to become real. There's this moment that happens when you've spent enough time facing your shadows, listening to your inner voice, and letting yourself be seen. Not by others, but by you. It's not a loud moment. No big epiphany or fireworks. It's subtle, but undeniable. Like the first breath after being underwater. You realize, I don't need to perform anymore. That's what integration feels like. Not a breakthrough, but a coming home. And let me tell you, it changes everything. I used to think that transformation meant becoming someone new, stronger, more confident, more enlightened. But now I know it's not about becoming. It's about allowing. Letting all the parts of you sit at the same table without kicking anyone out. Your ambition, your softness, your fear, your longing, your anger, your love, all of it belongs. And when you finally start to live from that place, from the inside out, you begin to show up in the world differently. You speak more honestly. You say no when something doesn't feel right, even if it disappoints someone. You pause before reacting. You cry without apologizing. You laugh without holding back. You rest without guilt. You become someone who no longer needs to prove their worth because you've remembered it was never up for negotiation. That's not to say the world makes it easy. In fact, sometimes the more whole you become, the more obvious it is how fractured the world still is. You might find yourself in rooms that no longer feel like home. You may lose people who love the mask more than the real you. You may feel raw, exposed, even a little lonely. But you won't feel lost anymore. Because the more you accept yourself, the more you attract people who can meet you there. In the realness, in the tenderness, in the truth. I've had friendships deepen in ways I never thought possible. Simply because I stopped pretending. I let them see me, all of me, and it gave them permission to do the same. That's the thing about authenticity. It's contagious. And even in the hardest moments, I feel something I never felt back when I was performing. I feel safe in myself. That safety doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from knowing I'll stay with me, no matter what. That I'll listen, that I'll show up, that I'll forgive myself when I fall back into old patterns because I will. We all do. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. We revisit the same wounds from new levels of awareness. And that's okay. You don't need to be healed to be whole. You just need to be here. I want to share something that really helped me stay grounded in this part of the journey. It's simple, but powerful. Ritual. Not in a religious sense, more like tiny acts of remembering. Lighting a candle when I write. Taking a deep breath before a hard conversation. Putting my hand on my heart when I feel unworthy. Journaling every morning, even if it's just 3 sentences. Listening to music that speaks to my soul. These rituals became anchors. Reminders that I'm still here. Still choosing myself. Still listening. It's easy to get swept back into the noise, into expectations, distractions, old habits. That's why these small, sacred pauses matter. They pull me back. They whisper, "You're not who you used to be." And that's a beautiful thing. And maybe the most important shift of all, I stopped trying to find my purpose in some grand, external way and started living on purpose. With intention, with presence, with care. Purpose isn't something you chase. It's something you embody. And when you live from your wholeness, even in ordinary moments, your life begins to speak. Not with perfection, but with truth. And truth is magnetic. So here I am now, not at the end of a journey, but deep in the middle of it. Still learning, still unfolding, still meeting myself in new ways. But I'm doing it from a place of softness instead of shame. Curiosity instead of control. Love instead of fear. And honestly, that makes all the difference. There's something sacred about reaching this part of the journey. Not because it's the end, but because you finally realize there is no end. That used to scare me. The idea that I might spend my whole life peeling back layers, meeting new parts of myself, revisiting old wounds. I thought healing had a finish line. That one day, I'd arrive, clear, whole, invincible. But now I see it differently. Now I know this path isn't about arriving. It's about returning, over and over again. Returning to truth, to presence, to love, to the self. And the more I return, the more I understand that the journey itself is the point. Not becoming something else, but becoming more of myself. That shift changes everything. It turns struggle into refinement. It turns fear into invitation. It turns life, with all its chaos and beauty, into something deeply personal, even magical. That's what Jung meant when he said that life really begins when you find yourself. Not when you finally succeed, or fix yourself, or make everyone proud. But when you stop running from who you are and start living from the inside out. And if you're here, reading this, you're already on that path. You're already waking up. And maybe, like me, you've discovered that some of the most transformative moments aren't big or dramatic. They're quiet, honest. They happen in the pause between distraction and decision. In the choice to sit with discomfort rather than numb it. In the courage to say what you actually feel. In the tenderness of forgiving yourself for not knowing sooner. They happen when you choose you. Not the version you think the world wants, but but the one that's been waiting patiently beneath all the noise. The soft, powerful truth that says, I'm here, I've always been here, and I'm ready to be lived. That's what wholeness feels like. Not perfection, but peace. Not certainty, but trust. Not control, but surrender. And from that place, something else starts to unfold. You begin to see other people differently. You stop judging so quickly. You recognize their masks, their wounds, their shadows, because you've seen your own. Compassion replaces comparison. Curiosity replaces resentment. Love replaces fear. Your relationships shift. Not because you demand it, but because your energy has changed. You attract different conversations, different connections. You stop chasing people who don't see you and start drawing in those who do. Not everyone will stay. Some people are meant for the older version of you. The one who performed, pleased, disappeared. And letting them go can be painful, but it's also freeing. Because for the first time, you're choosing relationships that honor your wholeness, not your performance. And in that space, you bloom. Not all at once. Not like fireworks. More like a tree that's been growing underground for years and finally breaks through the surface. You feel the sun on your face. You take up space. You stretch into your fullness. And you realize, this is what I was always meant to be. Not something shiny or flawless. Just true. And that's more than enough. So if I can leave you with anything at all, it's this. You're not broken. You never were. You're not behind. You're not too much or not enough. You're a story still unfolding. A soul still remembering. A life still rising. And every time you choose yourself, in a world that benefits from your forgetting, you plant a seed. A seed of truth, of courage, of wholeness. And those seeds, they grow. In you, in others, in the world. So take your time. Be gentle. Keep listening. Because this journey, this deep, wild, beautiful path of self-return is the most important thing you will ever do. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You just have to begin. If this felt meaningful to you, it might mean something to someone else too. So hit like, leave a comment, or subscribe. That's how YouTube knows to share it with others. Maybe together, we can help someone see things a little differently.